So I think anytime I have to be assertive, I'm really clear that I am going to clearly tell someone what was wrong. I'm going to tell them specifically why it was wrong and then how to do it right. And then I'm going to back it up with the expectation that I have. From here on out, what I need to see is, and then gain agreement on some level. Are we both on the same page? Can I answer any questions? Is this clear for you? Have I clearly identified the boundaries? I don't have to scare people or intimidate them in order to get them to act.
Hey there, dental economist. If you're a dentist owner or a leader within a dental business thinking about growing production, case acceptance, patient and staff satisfaction, positive outcomes, and everything else that comes with running a dental business, then you're a dental economist, and you've come to the right place. Welcome to the Dental Economist Show. We're meeting at the intersection of profit and purpose as I sit down with dental leaders who share their stories about dentistry, business, and growth. Welcome back to the Dental Economist Show with me, Mike Huffaker. Today, we're excited to host Jen Buck, an acclaimed keynote speaker, leadership trainer, and COO of the 100 Angels Foundation. With over 25 years of experience and impacting over 1 million individuals through her dynamic programs, Jen is not just a speaker, but a practitioner of effective leadership across various high-impact roles. She's here to share her insights on transformative leadership and training methods that can significantly benefit any organization. Welcome to the show, Jen. How are you doing today?
Hey, I'm good. I think you need to get hired to write my bio from here on out, man.
Happy to do that. Writing is an underappreciated skill these days. Everyone thinks AI can take it over, but I don't know. I'm not so sure. I can still tell very much when I'm reading AI-generated content. Thank you for joining. You delivered a keynote for us at our user event, and I thought it was really excellent and really love your approach and high energy. And so I was just excited to have you come and join the podcast. And, we speak to the dental industry. We speak to leaders within the dental industry, people that service the industry as well. And the same things that you talk about, impact and leadership and culture, are important regardless of the sector that we work in. So I think that it's going to be really fun to discuss some of those things with you today.
Yeah, I'm excited. I had so much fun with everybody at the Planet DDS conference, and I was excited to connect with you and be a part of this. So yeah, let's do it.
Let's start real quick with, can anybody be a good leader?
Absolutely. If that's where we're starting, Mike, I'm loving this interview. Yes, everybody can be a great leader. And I really think that it's a matter of what your priorities are as a leader. What's your focus? Is it about you? Is it about them? So absolutely. And I do think that leaders are made, not born. So I take that to the next level.
Yeah, I think that's sometimes a discussion that people have where they're like, does somebody have an innate ability to be a leader? Is it something that you learn, or do people just have this thing? Do you think that there are people that are more inclined to be better leaders than others, though? Is there something to that, or is it all purely just education, training, and experience?
I do think that there are some people that are just innately really, really good at leading others, inspiring, influencing, that kind of thing. But I don't think that just being inspiring and just being influential means you're going to be a great leader. So I think you can have the pieces of it, but when individuals really start to focus and hone in on the skill set that it takes to really, like an orchestra, work it all together, I think that's what creates great leadership. But yeah, I think we're born with innate qualities that absolutely benefit us as great leaders.
When you think about examples in your life of really strong leaders or managers or mentors that you've worked for, what are some of the traits or skills that really kind of stand out that make somebody great and not just good?
So I have a bunch of leaders who have made an impression on me. And to this day, I speak about them from stage. Many of them I'm still in touch with throughout all these years. When I look at the leaders I had when I was young, there was one consistent trait that went through all of them, and it was a demand that I raise the bar on what I was doing. It was a demand. I'm a stubborn individual. I'm also really undisciplined as a human being. Like, I just want to have fun. Let's just play. Let's talk. Let's just go. And so there was a demand that they put upon me. And I think they had to demand it because I was so totally not tuned into what those traits and abilities that were innate in me actually were. I didn't know them. And so there was a point in each of those relationships when I was younger where they had to be kind of tough on me. They were demanding, tough leaders. Now I look back and I realize that I am who I am because of them. But when I got older, and I got into the business world and then into the speaking world, there was a consistent vein that ran through all of those. And it was an absolute commitment to me being great and building a personal relationship with me. And so they still had this demanding nature, but they didn't approach me the same way, probably because I wasn't the same anymore, right? Now I'm aware and I'm interested and all of that. But each one of them built this personal relationship with me, and their dedication and commitment to me being great was really the driving force of every challenge or every difficult conversation or, every moment that tried me as a human being. And so it's really the relationship. And by the way, those leaders who were so tough on me when I was young, I'm now friends with them as an adult, finding out that these are people who were only like 10 and 15 years older than me. And now we're peers and friends, thank you, social media, after all these years. And they're outstanding humans. And so I think there were really two sides of the leadership, I guess, scale for me. And they had to do with where I was in the process.
Do you think that people are wary or concerned about being too hard on people? Like, you just mentioned that some of the most memorable leaders that you've had, they were tough, they demanded things. I think there's sometimes a fear currently of maybe hypersensitivity towards being too hard on folks. Like, how do you strike that balance? And what's the right way to approach being a leader that demands and sets certain expectations, but doing it in a way where you're still fostering growth in a positive manner?
So I think that's a great question because I think it's healthy to be worried about creating fear in other people. Like, we shouldn't as leaders. My job is not to create fear. My job is to help people raise the bar. The differentiator between those two sets of leaders for me was where I was at. I was a juvenile and then I was an adult, right? And adults shouldn't be in fear when they're in the workplace. They shouldn't be afraid to speak up, to admit failure, to go to their leader when they're insecure. There should not be fear. And so I think it's pretty healthy if there's a fear around that. Now, do I also think that as a leader, it's challenging because we have to balance that fine line of being assertive versus aggressive. And I hate to split things into gender roles, and that's really not my intention here. But for instance, in sports, and a lot of boys get this, I do too. I mean, I was a part of Title IX and all of that. So a lot of competitors were always encouraged to be aggressive. And so the word aggressive actually is a positive thing for a lot of athletes or former competitors. But when we get into the business world, there really is a different definition for what aggressiveness is. And so it's about understanding that when we're talking about communication as a leader, aggressive is when you bring about intimidation, fear, you're belittling, you're scaring another person. And so aggressive, something that had this really distinct sort of definition for me my whole life as a competitor, suddenly is something that I see as a big fat red line now, right? The goal is to be assertive, and it's to be as direct, specific, and here's the key to all of this, non-punishing as you can be. So I drill that into leaders' heads all the time, direct, specific, and non-punishing. Those are your boundaries right there. And if you can communicate clearly and directly, and you can be as specific as possible and do it in a non-punishing way, you're going to stay away from that line. That's just the foundation of all of the communication, and whether it's motivation or correction or whatever it might be, that's your line. And the minute you go over it and become punitive, you've crossed the line. And you should be afraid at that point because you don't get to do that with people at work.
So talk a little bit about a non-punishing way. What exactly does a non-punishing way mean?
So I think anytime I have to be assertive, I'm really clear that I am going to clearly tell someone what was wrong. I'm going to tell them specifically why it was wrong and then how to do it right. And then I'm going to back it up with the expectation that I have. From here on out, what I need to see is, and then gain agreement on some level. Are we both on the same page? Can I answer any questions? Is this clear for you? Have I clearly identified the boundaries? I don't have to scare people or intimidate them in order to get them to act. Now, I will say this, and here's the part that really screws so much of this up. When I was coming into business, we still had this veteran mindset, and I say veteran in terms of generations. So I'm an Xer. I was in the workplace with a lot of boomers, and the people who held the position of authority were veterans. And the veteran way of leading, motivating, keeping people in line, if you will, correcting, is to intimidate and is to show force and is to remind them who the authority is. And I'm not saying that it's wrong because it worked at the time. You scare people enough, they'll jump. The problem is what we know about human behavior is I'm only going to jump for so long, dude. You can keep scaring me and threatening me. And yeah, I'm jumping, but you know what? There's going to be a point where I turn around and I look you in the eye and I tell you exactly what I'm going to do from here on out. And whether that's staying with you or leaving the company, I'm done. And so that's what started to really change things when we literally back in like the 90s started saying, okay, maybe we should be looking at human behavior here and flip the model on its head, because threatening does create action, but it doesn't create long-term action. And so I really have it in my head that it's about clarity. It's about as much specificity as I can bring about and doing it in a fair way where there's 100% understanding about where the boundaries are.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. If you're just scaring somebody, there's no buy-in. You're not explaining why. You don't get the understanding. And so you're losing the long-term motivation for just a short action or activity that you would receive. But I guess it can, for those that have been used to that method, it feels effective in the moment. And it probably requires less work and a little bit less thoughtfulness to take that approach. You talked about being an expert. I heard on another podcast that you were discussing, that we have more generations kind of all in the workplace at the same time. Do you think that there is an approach that works across generations, or do you actually have to consider maybe managing folks in a different manner? You talked about when you were in your youth versus being an adult, and how do you adapt to still be fair in the application of your management style across a broad swath of ages and everything else in the workplace?
You're right. We have 4 different generations in the workplace predominantly, but we actually still have 5, depending on how long these veterans want to keep working, right? So you've got Generation Z, you've got the millennials, you've got Gen X, you've got the boomers, and you do have some of these people who are 79 and up that still are working. I was just giving a keynote 2 days ago to an association that teaches surgeons. And so those who are teaching are veteran surgeons who are teaching young residents. And so these are people who learned a certain way and they've had extreme success all their life. And now they've got these 2 younger generations who are digital natives born into technology, who are now being told, these senior surgeon instructors, that they have to change. That's hard because they've got 3 generations that are like, we all learn the same way, the top 3. Why do we have to change now? And one of the things I told them is that it's no different than me suddenly saying to you, you know what, you have to give up your phone, give up your TV. No longer will you have access to those. No more laptops, no digital anything. And you have to go back to reading a paper and listening to the radio to get your news. All 3 of those generations would kick and scream, the older one, because we all are seeing the changes that are coming about and it's being driven by the younger generation. So your question, is there anything that goes across all generations? And the truth is, it's fairness, it's equity, it's honesty, it's treating people with respect and dignity. It's making communication and engagement your driving pillar in everything that you do. There are different needs by each generation. You've got the older generations, I hate to even say this out loud, but that would include Generation X and up, who are totally okay with the old way of doing things. They like the formality. They like knowing that once a year they're going to be reviewed. They like knowing that there's going to be X amount percentage on each raise, all of that. But your younger generations, millennials and Generation Z, they're wanting less formality. They're wanting more face-to-face time. They're wanting to be inspired. The thing that's interesting about the youngest generations right now is that they want to know that they're making an impact. I never cared about impact when I was in my 20s. Impact? What the heck is that? And so this generation is coming in and saying, I want to know that the work I do makes a difference. I want to know that my voice is heard. So I think the answer to that is that there's really no one size fits all. But when you talk about things like fairness, respect, honesty, dignity, engagement, treating people well and making communication your pillar, those things work across all demographics. I mean, it just doesn't matter, right? And those are the things that we do when we're at our best anyway. When our stress is low, when we're in a great place, when things are going well, those are our pillars. It's when everything hits the fan that we forget about it. Those things go by the wayside. So I know I didn't answer your question, but I gave you a bunch of stuff around the question. I hope it kind of helps.
It does. It really does. I'd be curious your perspective, and maybe I'm going to sound like an old man myself here as I talk about this, but that role of personal accountability. And I don't mean to frame this as like, oh, this younger generation that doesn't think, that they're responsible for it. It's not that way. So I don't want to be the old man on the porch, like waving my newspaper. But I'm curious for myself, kind of on the ex-millennial border. And I've always viewed it as the company never owes me anything. And as long as I do my work to the best of my ability, I don't owe the company anything. And like, it's an equal partnership all the time. And if I want to be better, I go make myself better. The company doesn't need to make me better. Now, as a leader in my company, I want to make all the people on my team better. So I definitely want to continue to have the ability to pour into people's professional growth and personal growth. And I think that's important, but it wasn't an expectation that I had. And as you look, like, what is the balance between an individual accountability and an individual employee? What responsibility do you have and what part do you play versus what the company or the organization should be providing?
First of all, it's such a great question. And I almost wanted to scream, get off my lawn. Because there is a side of the generations that really believes that the company is responsible for moving them up, for developing them, for opening doors. And those are the older generations because that's the old model that used to work. And you're in this really interesting space along with the Xers. You're in the sandwich space where Xers brought a level of cynicism to the workplace that was, I'm here not to make work my life, but to allow my work to make my life great. So it's working to live, not living to work. The older two generations live to work. And then all of a sudden the Xers were like, no, I'm not going to. And so as much as I want to say we're all 100% still there, we're not, because we all get older and security becomes important. So we do end up somehow, in all of our independence and being rock stars kind of shifting into a more conservative like economic space. But the fact is the younger generations are expecting more from their employers. They are expecting development. They are expecting to be treated well and paid well. They are expecting flexibility in their spaces. I'm going to give you just a quick example. So I've got a daughter. She's 26, almost 27, and she's married. And the two of them, one day we're having this conversation and I'm getting ready for a keynote on generations. And the two of them were giving me answers to some of my questions. And I said to them, what would be a deal breaker for you? And my daughter said, if she had to work in an office 8 to 5 every day, Monday through Friday. And her husband said, if I wasn't developed, I'd be gone within 3 months. 3 months. And I also asked them if you could add one more benefit to your benefits package that would win you over if you had equal job opportunities being presented at the same time, what would your burning desire be? And they both answered at the same time, pet insurance.
Oh my goodness.
Oh my gosh. I never would have pulled that out even after answer 50. That would not, and I've got a pet. She's sitting in here with me right now. And it's so different, these younger generations. And the truth is, it's because this is how we've raised them. We've raised them to value different things. We've raised them to have a voice. We've raised them to really know what it is they want and go to school and get extensive degrees and be very choosy. This is how we've raised them. Well, from a leadership perspective, we're all sweating now because we're like, millennials say what? Generation Z say what, right? Because all of a sudden it feels audacious. And so we all are learning. And it's no different when I was teaching the same thing before we even had Zs in the workplace and we still had veterans everywhere. We were still having these same struggles. I don't think it goes away because we get older, we get wiser, which those things happen and we do, but it doesn't get easier because we are constantly coming in with new, fresh eyes and different ways of seeing things and valuing things.
I think the wording that you just used, that it seems audacious, is really actually powerful, impactful, because what comes into a lot of people's head is entitled. But it's not necessarily entitled. It is knowing what you want and being willing to speak about it. And it shouldn't be interpreted in a different way. And so I like that a lot. Give me something to think about there. Now, let me ask you though, so you want to be developed. And if I don't get developed within 3 months, I'm gone. There's got to still be a level of personal responsibility. And part of what I see in the younger generation are those, and this is not a work ethic issue. And it's really, I think a lot of it stems from what you are personally interested in. Because I think about myself and I just love business, right? So if I'm out walking the dog on the weekend, I'll listen to a podcast about business, about it's technically working while I'm walking the dog because it's what I'm passionate about. And it's what I really enjoy. And so there's still going to be folks like that, even in the younger generation, that are just passionate about whatever they're doing in their work life as well. Doesn't that give them a leg up? If you're willing to put in that extra time to work on self-development and not just count on your organization to provide it for you, I feel like that could be a competitive advantage.
How could it not be? If you look at the information that's out there and the different sources of information that people have at their fingertips now, how could it be anything but a benefit? I'm not even sure I even answered your question all that well with the last one, because I think that the older generations, they have an expectation that they're going to keep showing up and doing what they're supposed to do to support the business no matter what. The younger generation has more expectations around development, around flexibility, around pay, around benefits. So I just think that the expectation in general is very different. But I do think that this younger generation is very hungry for knowledge because this is the world they've been brought up in. I will never forget. Oh, it kills me even to talk about it. We were just coming back in March from a family vacation. And we jumped into the line at the airport for customs. And now, if you've traveled outside of the country and come back in, you know that it's a nightmare. Hours will be spent in line with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people. It's a disaster. So we jumped in this zippy little short line, found out quickly we were supposed to have either some documentation saying that we had gone through the federal check, or we had to have the little 24-hour app downloaded, real quick background check done so we could go through. So we find this out more in line. So I look at the line and I'm like, nope, breaking all the rules. We're going to go play dumb and we're going to give this a shot. And so as we're in line, someone says, you have to have this app. So we all jump on it. So it's my husband and I and daughter and her husband. And as husband and I are downloading the app, our daughter behind us says to her husband, will you help them, please? And I was so instantly mad because I recognize that tone because I've done it with my boomer parents when they were fumbling on their phones. And I flipped around so fast. I don't think I've ever moved faster. And I said to her, I'm already done. It's like my dignity was on the line. Like, I'm done. And so I say this because they're so fast with technology. They're so hungry for it. They're so interested in facts and details. Like, it really blows my mind, the stuff that generation can rattle off. I'm a quick mind because I'm an educator. They're quick because of their generation. It is just different. And so I think you're 100% right. I do think they're also hungrier for learning. And we're seeing that in the expectations of the generation as a whole.
I want to talk a little bit more about the meaningful work or working where you can make an impact. If you are a leader in an organization, you own your own business, you're running a company, can you make it where that is something that all of the roles within your company have the potential to do? Or is it really specific, like somebody has to have some type of passion for where they are going to work? And I don't know if I'm asking that very well. I'm trying to kind of determine, can you create positions where you're able to articulate why it's meaningful and that it does make an impact and that your work is important? And should that be something that maybe companies are better at articulating if they're looking to attract the younger generation to work there?
So the question is clear, and I think it's a really important one right now. And I think it's top of conversation when it comes to CEOs in large organizations that are starting to understand what matters to the younger generations. Social impact is huge. It's such a topic right now of conversation among top leaders because what they're realizing is that people don't purchase from companies unless they are socially aware, unless they're doing good in communities, unless they're making an impact to make the world better. And the younger generation workers are making deliberate choices in companies that they work for based on the amount of social good that they do. And so I think it's important to understand that as leaders, we have a responsibility to be aware of not only what consumers want, but what our people want. So someone might come in, let's say, and work as a receptionist. It may not be the most awe-inspiring job they've ever done, but they're working for an organization who provides dental care to kids in Uganda. And this person gets a chance to be a part of the ripple effect that comes from that social good, right? And so I don't think it has to necessarily be a role, but there has to be something that is being done where we feel as human beings that we are making an impact. And that impact might be in the way you deal with customers. It may be the way you answer a phone, but it also may be something much larger than you that an organization is responsible for. And I think what you're going to see in the coming years, because this has been a hot topic now for about 5 years, hot topic. I think you're going to see this become even hotter because these younger generation workers are coming in, not only as employees, but also entrepreneurs who are saying, I just talked to one yesterday, as a matter of fact, and his name is Randy out of Canada. And he gives for every $100 he makes, he gives $10 to organizations. And he's in real estate and makes massive amounts of money. So for every 100, he's giving 10% away. And he's doing this because he believes that it's his responsibility as part of the human connection on this planet. You're going to hear more about this. This is going to become even hotter. And I think it's smart for us to start thinking about how do we align the right people with things that are right for them? Because it might not be answering a phone. It might not be cleaning teeth. It might not be setting up, I don't know, an IT system. There might be a broader impact that the person is desiring. And it's important for us to know those things.
So is the connection for this generation, it's more important that their organization is being socially responsible and a good corporate steward, or is it that they also individually want an opportunity to serve? Because it's a little bit different if I'm a receptionist and I just know that the doctors in my practice or in my organization, they go to Uganda and they help underserved children, provide pro bono dental work. Like, that's great. That feels good, but I'm there just doing my job. Is there a further kind of desire to also have those opportunities presented? Or is it just important enough that as an organization, you are making sure that you are providing good opportunities and giving back to the community?
I don't know. I mean, that's such a hard question to answer, but I will say this. As someone who right now is the COO of a nonprofit organization, I will tell you without question, the largest demographic of my volunteers are college kids and kids that are in those transitional years of either just getting out of college, just getting into a job. But we're talking about kids that are anywhere from 18 to 25, understandably adults, but it's the younger generation. Those are the people who are showing up. And so social good matters. But I also think we're forgetting that, when it comes to engagement, people want to be a part of something bigger than themselves. And one of the best things that could have happened to corporate America in the last decade are ERGs, these employee resource groups, where you get people of like minds who come together once a month to talk about something that matters to them. Whatever that is, it's a cohort that's created purposefully to make an impact. And so it might be going and building a home, at Habitat for Humanity. It might be going down to the local soup kitchen and serving together. It might be creating backpacks for kids before the start of the school year. Whatever it is, people want to be engaged. And when I get to see you, my COO or my CFO or my CEO out in the wild, like totally in your element, not being buttoned up, but I get to see you as a human, it deepens my connection to you as a leader, therefore deepening my connection to the organization. So it doesn't have to be something that is a social good initiative that the company is doing in Uganda, but it has to be something that contributes somewhere. And that's what's really being spoken about by this younger generation right now. They want to know that they're making an impact and they want to work for companies making an impact. Backyard, across the world, it doesn't matter. They want to be a part of something that makes an impact.
That's really well said. I had on my show a couple months ago, CEO of a group called Trek Dental and out of Canada, Jan Jaffer, and they do dental nonprofit giving back into third world countries. They do clothing drives right there in their own community. They're always posting about it on LinkedIn. It's really, really cool. And it's like part of their core values, which is in their name. I forget what Trek stands for. It's TREC, but it speaks about engagement with the community and giving back. And it's something I've started to see. And, we had lunch a month or so ago, and you were sharing about your work with the nonprofit. I'm seeing that many of the leaders that I look up to and respect are very active in nonprofits. Is there a connection that, giving back makes you a better leader?
I think so. I was just asked in another interview last week, if I had to give up speaking for the rest of my life, what would I do? And I said, I'm doing it. I'm running a nonprofit. I'm running a nonprofit because I love it and I believe in the mission and I love being a part of something that makes my community better, right? When I started working in nonprofits, there was a need in the community. No one was filling that particular hole. So I jumped in, had no idea what I was doing. But here's the key. I had decades of experience. I started my career in a startup. It's Discover Card now. But for goodness sakes, we were this little tiny credit card that no one had ever heard of. And they thought we were part of the Discovery cable channel. And so I was there for the first 10 years of their inception. And I say this to you because they developed me to be an outstanding leader. And so all of a sudden I'm in the nonprofit world. There's chaos everywhere. And it was like, I've been trained for this. And not only was I trained for this, and I think it's my responsibility to utilize my skills and the development that's been given to me for good. I do believe that. But I also had the ability to suddenly speak for communities that didn't have someone speaking for them. And that's where all of a sudden the light bulb went off. Oh my gosh, I get this. But there was a challenging part of this. One, I've cleaned more toilets than any human being should, and I didn't use any of them. Two, people get tired and they're not responsible for hitting a certain expected level of work. And three, they won't come back if it's not pleasant. So all of a sudden, everything I'd been talking about for years, like you do what needs to be done regardless of your title, or you treat people well no matter what and you keep it light and fun, or you let people work at their pace. All three of those were challenged on a daily basis. And it has changed the way that I lead as a leader because they may not come back the next day. If I don't step in, it may not be done. If I expect them to do something that they're not naturally skilled at, we're all going to fail. Like it shifted everything for me. And so I now look at my employees as volunteers. That's as honest as I can be, because all of those elements that I thought were a given because you're an employee and I'm the boss, all of a sudden were challenged in the nonprofit world. And it made me absolutely a better leader because I treat everyone like a volunteer now. And isn't that how we all want to be treated? Valued, appreciated, engaged with, that kind of thing.
As an organization or a company, not feeling like your employees owe you something. Like, hey, think of them all as volunteers. Everyone on your team is a volunteer. Everyone has free choice to leave. Like if you approach people and handle people in that way, you're always going to, be coming from a point of positive intent and of positivity and of looking to help versus looking to chastise. So I think that the framing of that can be really useful. I think a lot of companies these days are looking around and they have maybe more people in senior leadership in the higher executive level and looking at their teams, their organizations go like kind of soft in the middle, or our middle management's, not all that great. Maybe we should like get rid of these people and hire some different people. It's like, that's probably not the answer. And you just mentioned at your time with Discover that they trained and developed you to be an amazing leader. So if you are running a company and you feel like you have deficiencies in your team's leadership abilities, management abilities, and they're younger, newer to their careers, what's the path that you take to solve for that?
I'm a believer that development is one of the pillars of everything I do. And there aren't a whole lot of pillars here. I'm not talking about having 10 pillars. I'm talking about it being one of my main drivers every day. So development, whether that's through training, whether that's through some type of digital gamified program that they can go through, maybe it's going to conferences, maybe it is mentorship, whatever it is. And ERGs are usually a big piece of that, by the way, getting the people together to read something together, to discuss things together, to learn together. I think that development, when we make that a cornerstone of our leadership, I think you can't help but get that well done patty in the center of your burger. Because yes, you're always going to have people who are soft coming in that don't really know what they're doing. And you're always going to have people who are kind of soft on their way out. But when you can create a really, really well done middle of that burger where you've got people who are capable, they're confident, they've been developed, they are risk takers, they don't shy away from adversity, they take the risk, they know they've been prepared for this, they jump in even when it may not be their role, but they're willing to step into that space. That tells you that you've created a well done middle. And I think that for me has worked really well. It's also the way I think, right? Because I'm a developer. That's just part of my definition. But I think I've learned it from people who've done it so beautifully that it's now become something that I can't help but now add into my style of leading because I was led that way. So I just think that making development a cornerstone of your business. And if you look at people, I'll just give you a quick example. Jeff Weiner, who's the head of LinkedIn, he spends an hour and a half every day talking with his people and not doing any work and just talking about their goals as a human being and how he can support them, whatever that looks like. That's extraordinary. Hour and a half a day just to be of service so that I can open doors for you with your pet projects or what it is you're doing outside of here. That's incredible. And so I just think that we all need to put more commitment into that area and recognize, yes, it takes more time, but only in the short term, because the more you develop that well-developed middle, you don't have to spend the same amount of time in the development phase, but it's also something that becomes a part of who you are. It just is a part of the way that you lead.
I would imagine the companies that do this the best, they kind of ingrain it into just kind of the natural motion of life in that organization. So it's kind of a perpetual, ongoing thing. It's not like, hey, go to this conference this weekend. You're a great leader now. Thank you. And just be awesome. There's a continual kind of ongoing training and resource that's provided. Can you talk a little bit more about the ERGs and what does that stand for again? What's the Employee Resource Group?
Resource groups, exactly.
Okay.
They are formed for anything at all. So I do a lot of work with ERGs, and it might be women's ERGs, it might be a DEI ERG. I have actually heard of, but I have not actually spoken to them, a knitting ERG. There are a lot of social good ERGs. So ERGs are just created in organizations to create a cohort for people to come together to strengthen that belief around that thing. It's creating action. It's creating more learning opportunities. It's creating a space where people feel as if they're a part of something. They're extraordinary. I speak at lunch and learns for them all the time because this is really the soul of an organization. When people tell me, how do I change the culture of my organization? I say, start your ERGs. Your ERGs are going to tell you what your culture is, and then support them with everything you have. Give them a line item in your budget. Make sure that these people are developed and they are supported and they are invested in, because that's the culture of your organization. And you won't even know it until they're formed. So it's an important piece of culture creation, but it also is, a little scary. People are getting together and you're just allowing them to get together for an hour a month or whatever it might be. But they are what is needed for culture to thrive in an organization.
So we started a book club just within the revenue team and sales and marketing, started about a year and a half ago. So did we start an ERG accidentally? It's been going on for about a year and a half now.
You started some kind of developmental group.
Yeah, it's been awesome. And it's funny, it's a little tight-knit community now. And we've got, 14 to 16 people that participate in it. We open it up every month if anybody new wants to join. We also kick people out if they don't participate after 2 books. And we all vote on the books, and we do it's all professional development books, leadership, 5 dysfunctions of a team, things like that. And then we have our discussions, and it's been awesome. I love it. It's one of my favorite things.
What you probably created is a leadership ERG of some sort.
Yeah, I love that. Now I have a name that I can use for it, and we can use that as an example of other things that we can do within our organization. I want to be conscious of your time, so we'll wrap up here in a few minutes. What are some of the things that you yourself are most excited about when you're kind of looking at the future of corporate culture or leadership, anything in that area?
I think first and foremost, I'm excited that everybody is now shifting from the old way of leading, which is through force, authority, and aggressiveness. We already talked about that earlier. And they're starting to understand that it's about engagement, it's about empathy, and it's about encouraging through learning or helping or mentoring or whatever. I think there's just been this really interesting flip-flop that's happened. And I love it because I think when we start to see people for who they are, not what they do, we start to turn the tables, because we've always put all of our focus on the numbers, the measurements, the accomplishments, the goals, whatever. And we're starting to realize that we can't get there unless we're taking care of the people and the culture and the interests and the development. And so I think that's what's most exciting for me. And I know that I was reared, raised, developed, whatever, by extraordinary leaders who had that mindset. And I am loving that they're not the weird ones anymore. Because when they were leading me, people were like, you're so lucky. Now it's becoming the norm that people are getting it. You've got to create the environment where people can thrive, period. And so I love that. I also love that we're starting to see more of the social good happening. So it's very normal to have these quarterly days on a Saturday where people can go and serve in their community. We're starting to see more of that. I am somebody who truly believes that organizations thrive when their people thrive. And people don't thrive just because they work for you. I wish that were the case. They thrive because you give them things that light their fire. You give them opportunities that absolutely touch their heart. And so I love seeing that the social good concept is growing and that employees are starting to expect leaders to create environments where they thrive. And I know that's hard for some of us old ones, but I think we all enjoy it more. It feels like more effort to create it, but then once we're in the middle of it, we're like, holy cow, why didn't we do this 10 years ago, right? Because everybody's happy and everybody's excited and everybody's committed to whatever it is we're focused on. And so I'm very, very inspired to see a massive shift that's happening in the way we lead people and the way that we create cultures. And I think it's only good. I'm someone that was raised with Mr. Rogers way back when, and Mr. Rogers' mom used to always say, find the helpers. And that's what I believe we're getting to, that kindness matters, taking care of those that work for you extending that beyond the workforce, taking care of the community too. I mean, all of this has been proven to increase the bottom line of every single company. I mean, this is a non-negotiator, right? This is just what happened. And so I'm glad people are getting it, because that's the future of work to me. The future of work is creating spaces where people are sold out, like they are so deeply in, and that's what every leader wants.
Yeah, it's great. It's counterintuitive to the way that it was thought about a long time ago, where you just mentioned it, the numbers and the metrics. It's like you need to focus on all of these things. Well, you get to this as a byproduct of creating this culture and this environment in the way that you've just explained it. So you talked about kind of the changes that are taking place in the workforce. If you are joining a company and you want to find an environment that's very close to kind of what you've just explained, what are some of the questions you should ask, and how do you determine like if it's the right fit for you?
So based on friends of mine who are recruiting for top companies that I'm not going to rattle them off, but the biggest of the biggest of the big, especially in specifically retail. So you can put two and two together for that. So one of the things that I have learned from them is that people are starting to ask specifically about what they're doing outside of the company, that what they're doing to create community engagement and employee engagement. ERGs are being asked for and asked about very specifically. Flexible work environments. People are demanding that now. I mean, we all learned during COVID, we can do this from home and keep the boat afloat. And it's not that everybody wants to be at home all the time. They just don't want to be in all the time. And that's hard to do. I know not every environment can do that, especially your audience, right? We can't all do that. But I think there are ways that we can create benefit in different areas that pull people in, that make them feel a part of something. And so people are getting very specific, and it's our job to make sure when we are recruiting, when we're interviewing, that we are really tooting our horn about all the things that we're doing that are employee focused, that are community focused. Those are the areas that these younger generations want to know about now. And bringing up your developmental plan is important as well. I'll tell you another thing that my kids said. I got all this education and I will not take a job for less than $100,000 a year. I get it. They've got master's degrees. I get it. But talking very honestly about benefits and pay, bonuses, other things that create value that may not be monetary, I think it's important for us to be very transparent about that now. And I will tell you that my kids going on interviews just boldface ask these things. And I say, you didn't. And they, of course I ask, because we've raised them to ask the hard questions. We've raised them to speak up. We've raised them to be strong and on some level audacious. And the fact is, they are a demanding customer, but they're also really inspired and really committed to making an impact if we do it the right way. And so I think it's our job to be as transparent and to add up all the value in other places that also are part of the package that we're offering people along with the pay. It's not just benefits and pay anymore. It's got to be something bigger in that package. And that does have to do with development and community and ERGs and employee value.
Yeah, so last question, we've talked about continuing growth and creating cultures of continual growth. You yourself, you have your own business. Where do you go to learn and how do you continue to grow?
So one of the most exciting things that I'm a part of right now that I want every single one of your listeners, including you, by the way, to jump on immediately is the NASDAQ Foundation. NASDAQ, it's actually NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Foundation. It's 100% free, and it is the NASDAQ that we're all thinking of. They have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of free seminars, free coaches, executive coaches, free webinars, free chats, fireside chats where they'll get together like every Wednesday. It is 100% free. And I'm a part of NASDAQ right now. I am a part of a 12-week cohort where I meet with like 50 women every single week. And we are pushing each other and creating this momentum for one another. I've been asked to be one of the NASDAQ coaches and put out a seminar, put out some kind of help in some way. I haven't gone there yet, but it's probably something I'm going to do because I'm so excited about what they're doing, because there is not another resource like this out there, period. And I've been doing this 25 years and I've never seen anything like it in my entire career. So that's the first thing I would say. I engage in seminars. I engage in, as a learner, in webinars, and I read all the time. And so I'm just somebody who's naturally curious about the world. And for me, I can tell when I'm not learning. I can tell when my energy's lower. I can even tell that my speech changes when I'm not reading or learning. Words don't come to me as fast, and that might be age, but I can just tell when my brain's not sharp, right? I can tell that I'm missing something. And I really truly believe that the greatest leaders are great because they're always, always open to new ideas. And the best leaders I've ever worked for are constantly evolving and raising the bar for themselves and me as someone who was following them. So that would be what I do on a regular basis. And I would tell your listeners, jump on NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center. Even if you're not an entrepreneur right now, it doesn't matter. The wealth of resources is like nothing I have ever seen, ever.
That's awesome. I've never heard of that. So today I learned, which I love, which is fantastic. So Jen, thank you so much for joining us. Where can people find you?
I am at Jen Buck Speaks everywhere. JenBuck Speaks, because I'm a speaker. So whether it's social media or my website.com, but it's Jen Buck Speaks.
Fantastic. Thanks again. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
The Dental Economist Show is brought to you by Planet DDS. To find out more about how cloud-based dental software by Planet DDS helps unleash dentists and their staff to focus on patient care, visit www.planetdds.com. Stay tuned for upcoming episodes by following wherever you listen to podcasts. Thanks for listening.